Okay, we're good. Welcome everybody to the session on the Alfresco PDF Toolkit version 1.0. Just a quick introduction. For those of us that haven't met yet, my name is Nathan McMinn. I work as a technical consultant with Alfresco. I've been with the company now since about February, and previous to this was with a customer for about 3 or 4 years. A little bit about the PDF Toolkit for those that haven't already used it. The Alfresco PDF Toolkit is a set of extensions for Alfresco that provide additional functionality around PDF documents. The project goal is to create the most complete set of tools for PDF handling and manipulation available for the Alfresco platform. We've had about 4,000 downloads since launch. It's fairly popular for an open source community project. The project team really consists of about 4 people. Jared Otley, who is with Alfresco Consulting, actually started the project back in, I think, 2010. I joined him shortly thereafter as a committer. We've also had Diego, who committed some additional changes, and Nick Birch, who gave us one of our transformers. Just a little bit about the project history. Again, in January 2010, we did release 0.9, and we presented that at DevCon 2010 in New York, for anybody that might have been there. Around that same time frame is when I started contributing to the project, and we added the watermarking, the encryption, and the digital signature actions. The project kind of languished a little bit after that. We all got busy with our, our regular job responsibilities. And then around September 2012, we actually got ready to launch the new version, this version 1.0, which added some new transformers and also brought it up to speed for Alfresco 4, including share. Previously, we only worked through the Alfresco Explorer interface. None of these actions were available through share, except through some fairly convoluted content rule configuration. Much like most Alfresco extensions, we deliver this as 2 AMP files, one for the repository tier that's delivered just as a standard AMP. You can install it using the tools you already know. And the second one is the share extensions, which is also delivered as an AMP file. We do formal releases every so often when we have enough new functionality and bug fixes to make it worth doing. But if you're feeling brave, you can always get the latest code from the Subversion head. We don't check anything into head until it's actually functional. So that branch tends to be pretty stable, but you know, your mileage may vary. The PDF Toolkit extension consists of a handful of components. So perhaps the most important and the biggest part of this are some custom actions for handling PDF documents. And we'll get into exactly what actions are available in the toolkit and what they do in just a moment. We've also got a custom content model that defines some new aspects that we use to capture information about certain PDF-related events. We have some advanced search functionality, 2 new transformers, a new constraint type, and then a handful of share user interface enhancements. As I said earlier, the meat of this project is in the actions. So these are all repository tier actions that run against PDF docs. So we can do PDF split, which will actually split a document at a predefined page interval. We have split at page, which will split it into 2 PDFs at a defined page. We do an insert action, which will insert the content of one PDF into another. Merge, which is basically the insert action repurposed to do a content merge. Digital signatures, which apply PDFs, using the PDF digital signatures functionality that's built into the document format. Encryption, which does standard Adobe PDF encryption, allows us to set passwords for the owner and for consumers of that document. And also PDF watermarking. And in our case, a PDF watermark can be either text or an image that's embedded into a PDF doc as a new layer. The new aspects that we've defined, the first one is PDFT signed, and this is applied when a document gets signed using the toolkit. So we're going to capture the Alfresco user that executed the action, the reason and the location. The reason that we capture this is that the Alfresco user who signs a document might not be the same person who generated the key that was actually used to sign that doc. So the person who generated the key is stored in the digital signature itself, but we also want to know what Alfresco user executed that action. And we also have a new aspect for encryption, which will show us which Alfresco user encrypted it and when it was encrypted. The reason we have those new aspects is mostly to drive search. So one of the requirements that we came across was people wanted to find all documents that were signed by a specific Alfresco user. The only way we could do that was to capture that information at the time it was signed and then provide some advanced search functionality around that. It's important to note that we don't really override the existing share forms, so all of the search functionality that's already available in share remains available for these new advanced search types. Encrypted PDFs, we also allow searching on that based on, again, the user that did the encryption and the date that it was encrypted. In addition to the actions, we've also put in 2 new content transformers. One of these kind of fills a hole in the Alfresco product today, and the other one was there kind of more as an intellectual exercise, but is still pretty functional. So the first is a text to PDF transformer. This is available for taking a text document and transforming it to a PDF doc. It works with just your basic text MIME types, so plain text, CSV, and XML. We also have added a TIFF to PDF transformer, and this requirement was driven by a publishing customer who has a lot of content coming out of their creative department, but it all comes out as a TIFF format, and they want to be able to embed this into a PDF and then route that PDF through some workflow, apply a watermark indicating that it might be a draft image, for example. So we do a real basic transformation, which will take a TIFF image and convert that over to a PDF. It's important to note at this point, this was just added for the 1.0 release. It is very basic. We don't do much in the way of scaling or multi-image TIFF support, but both of those things are in the version 1.1, which is slated for release pretty soon. We've also added a new constraint type. It's called a map constraint, and this allows us to configure constraints on our custom actions using a map defined in Spring. So, for example, when we look at a PDF watermark, right, we want to know about where it's going to be applied. So is it going to be applied above the content of the PDF or below? We implemented that as a map constraint. If you wanted to repurpose that class, it's pretty easy to do so, and you can see in our module context XML, first of all, how to use it, what class it uses, and also a complete list of the configured constraints. Now, in a little bit, we're going to get into an example of how we would use JavaScript to call one of these actions, and to do that, you need to know what values you're passing to the action as a parameter, and the list of valid values is configured in those constraints. So if you're using this thing in a JavaScript API context, looking in module context can be very illustrative. As far as share extensions, we did have to do some client-side customizations to make everything work right in content rules. So specifically things like document and folder pickers. Has anybody here developed custom actions for Alfresco before? A couple? Okay, have you tried to use them through share? Well, you'll notice that when share renders a repository to your action, it renders that action form. If you have a node reference parameter type, by default, share gives you a text box for that. It doesn't actually give you a file picker to go in and find your file. So what you end up having to do is go navigate to that file, look in the URL, grab the node reference, and then go copy and paste it into the rule. And that's not a really friendly way to do things. So we've implemented a couple of UI customizations to allow for document and folder pickers in share when you're using the PDF toolkit. We've also added some content indicators. So sometimes it's difficult to tell if a particular piece of content has been encrypted or signed. The content indicators give you a kind of an at-a-glance view within the document list to show whether a document has been encrypted or signed using the toolkit. Now, it's important to note that that only works with things that have been encrypted or signed using the toolkit, because that indicator is driven off of the aspect. And the last thing we've added are document library actions. So content rules are really, really powerful for acting on content when it's added to the repository or when it's updated. Very location driven, right? So you're going to apply a rule to a folder, and that rule then executes or calls an action when content within that folder is modified or updated or deleted. It's great for handling content ingestion or maybe as part of a simple workflow. But if your users are actually going to be calling these things interactively, it's a little bit more difficult. So the document library actions are there to take all of the actions that the toolkit provides and make them available in the DocLib. And we're going to go through a demo of that here in a little bit. Just a side note, when it came to configuring those, the form service in Alfresco is really, really cool. So demo time. The first thing that I want to look through here is take a look at we're going to look at a couple of the actions as used through, oh, hold on a sec. Okay, great. So we're going to look at a couple of the actions first through content rules and show you how those work. And then we're going to take a step back, kind of look at the Alfresco share configuration for taking these actions and making them available through document library actions. And then we'll do a demo of those as well. So I've already got some pretty simple rules tests set up here. The first one I want to look at is the PDF split action. So if we go and we take a look at the configuration of, you can see by the little indicator here that there is a content rule applied to this folder. And I'm going to go to Manage Rules and take a look at what rules are actually applied. So we can see we have one here. It's called Split PDF. And if I edit that rule, we'll note that we're performing the split PDF action. And this little bit here is one of the things that we had to do a client-side customization to make work properly. All of the PDF actions are available here, so merge, split, sign, etc. And if we go back to our folder, I'm just going to grab a really simple, this is the Getting Started with Share PDF doc. We've added it to the document library. And if we look in the split folder, we can see we have one PDF doc now for each page that was in our source document. This can be really useful if you have to do some reordering of pages or document reassembly. Another example is the PDF append functionality. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to take one PDF doc and we're going to append it to another. I've seen people use this in the field when they have to append a signature page, for example. They might have a contract, they've gotten a signature page faxed back by the customer, and they want to take that signature page and they want to append it to the actual contract document. So again, I'm not going to go through the content rule configuration. We just looked at that. It's basically the same. And we'll take our same document here, Getting Started with Enterprise Share. Take a look in the appended folder, and if we look at our merged PDF, Murphy's Law of Demos strikes again. See if I can get that to come up. Okay, we'll just have to pull it down and take a look. So we've got the enterprise release notes. This is the actual document that I had configured as the parent doc, if you will. And then we scroll all the way down to the bottom of this, we'll see that we have our share configuration, or our share tutorial has been appended to the end. So just a real quick word about the trouble spots here. I mentioned this briefly when we got started, that the rule configuration, user interface, and share requires these client-side extensions to render a specific widget to allow you to do this file picker functionality. It was a little bit difficult to get that working, but it had to be done. It also gives us, unfortunately, very little control over the rule configuration form layout. So if you look at this one, this is kind of complicated, right? This is the encrypt PDF action, which takes a lot of different parameters. So we're going to do things like set a user password and owner password, set all these different permissions. The form is functional, but it's not very clear exactly what's going on here. So one of the things I'd love to see happen in Alfresco going forward would be the ability to actually define a form in share configuration and use an action evaluator to use the form service to render this form instead of actually having to do it through client-side extensions. One other thing before we get into the document library actions, in previous versions of the PDF Toolkit, and actually version 1.0 as well, when we create the output file for one of these actions, so when we go in and we say we merge some PDF documents, or we take one and we encrypt it or we sign it, we're actually creating a brand new node in the destination folder that's been defined for the action. In version 1.0, it's always of type CM content. So that can actually be a problem if you've defined your own custom content types. I mean, say you have a contract type, right, that defines the parties or the expiration date of the contract. You want to preserve all of that when you do one of these PDF signature actions. In version 1.1 that's coming out here in a couple of weeks, within our Spring configuration, we've added a new property called create new. And by default, that's set to true. If that's set to true, what we do is we preserve the current behavior, right? Because we don't want to break backwards compatibility for people that are already using this out there in the field. If you set that to false, it's actually going to copy the existing node, including its type, any applied aspects, and all of its metadata. So starting from version 1.1 forward, we're actually able to preserve that information. So if we take a look here about the shared Doclib actions, this is the same actions list that we have on the repository tier. It's all the exact same stuff. And just a note, it really is almost silly how easy it is to take a custom action that you've defined on the repository and make it available as a document library action in share. It really is just a very small piece of a surf configuration. So we define the action. We'll tell it where to find its labels, so a resource file or properties file. The two important bits here, though, are the function and the item ID. So this function is basically telling us to take all the parameters that are defined for this action, and that's retrieved from the repository, and we're actually going to render a form based on that stuff. And huge pleasant surprise when we were getting this ready for Alfresco 4, we found that just worked. So we don't customize any of the forms. This is all the out-of-the-box forms. The other thing that's important here is the item ID. So the item ID is the ID of the action as defined on the repository tier. So if you go in there and you have an action that's called PDF-encryption, as we do, and you specify that as the item ID, that action is just by default going to be available. And we'll show that right now. So in my test assets folder, I have just a couple of sample documents that we're going to use to demo this functionality. The first one I want to talk about real quick is the PDF watermarking action. This is really handy if you have to, both as a content rule or as a document library action, if you want to mark a document as draft status, or say you have a signature image that you want to apply to a document. You might want to change the background image, place something like a background image underneath the text of a piece of content. So to configure this, the first thing I'm going to do is select a destination folder. I'm just going to use the document library here. We're going to select a watermark image. Indicate which pages we'd like to watermark. In this case, I actually, you know what? I apologize. I'm doing this to the wrong document. So we're going to indicate which pages we'd like to apply the watermark to, in this case all. We can also set the depth. So this is going to tell us whether the new content that we're inserting into this PDF is layered above or below the existing content. So in this case, I want to put it under. I'm not doing a text watermark, so I can go ahead and leave the text blank as well as the font size. I do want to set the type to image, and I want to leave the position as a centered position. Just a quick word about the forms. This is one of the things that we have targeted for 1.2 as a big improvement. If you select, for example, a text watermark type, we should hide that watermark image selector. If you select an image watermark type, anything related to text, we should hide. So there are some free marker templates that we can use to override the form behavior, and those are in development. So we can see now the document's been successfully watermarked, and if I go back to my sample contract doc, that background image that we've selected has now been applied under the text content of the PDF doc that we started with. Another really common use case for the PDF toolkit is around document security. And we'll use the sample case study that I have here as an example. We're going to go in and we're going to select encrypt PDF document here. The PDF document format provides for encryption and some permissions management as part of the file specification. So we can set a user password, which allows us to lock the document so that you have to have the password to actually view the content. The owner password is required if you want to make changes to any of the permissions that have been set for the doc. And the list of permissions is kind of shown here, right? We can say that this document is printable, copyable, it's modifiable. annotatable, whether or not it can be form-filled, screen reader. You can also set it to allow a degraded print. So say you're sending proofs to a customer, for example, you've developed some copy or some sort of a brochure for them, and you want to make sure that they don't just take your samples and run with them without paying you. You can set this the degraded print to true, and it'll allow them to print out a version that can be passed around, but the quality is significantly reduced. We can also set the encryption level. By default, I've got this set to 128-bit AES, which I think is probably on the lower end of what's acceptable if you're doing government work, but it is still AES standard, so I think it'll meet the requirements there. This next option is kind of interesting. We're going to set whether or not to exclude metadata from encryption. The reason that you might not want to encrypt that metadata is that when the document gets moved into Alfresco, we do a metadata extraction, right? So that all the metadata fields are searchable. If the metadata is encrypted, it's not going to work. You'll be able to search on like the file name and the dates, but that's about it.
So behind that, do you use the property type decode encrypted? If the user chooses to include the metadata encryption?
No, we don't actually.
So if we don't check that, I'm sorry. So if we don't check that, exclude metadata from inscription, then if I have the title, I have to create date, and all the metadata associated to that document, they all will be encrypted before it's stored into our Alfresco system database, correct?
Oh, right, they'll actually be encrypted within the document itself. So the PDF document format has several sections. If you actually open up the file and you look at it with a hex editor.
The title and
right, all the metadata section in the header of the PDF document will be left plain text, but everything that represents the actual content of the document will be encrypted.
Okay.
Yeah, and this really only matters for metadata extraction within Alfresco. We don't use the de-encrypted type at all. We apply our own custom aspect when it's encrypted because we need to capture some additional information about the encryption event.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So to demo this, I'm just going to go ahead and pick the document library again. And do the doc encryption. So back in the document library now we have our sample case study. One thing that you'll note right away, we have our small indicator here that shows that this actually is an encrypted PDF. So this is a content indicator that's driven off of that custom aspect. Another caveat of document encryption is right here. If the doc's encrypted, of course, Alfresco can't pipe it through PDF to SWF. PDF to SWF is not aware of how to decrypt a document, so the document previews will break there. There are a couple potential solutions for that. We're kind of looking into some different ways to make that work. Maybe to do a little pop-up and ask you to provide the password if you want to do the preview. But that's kind of a forward-looking statement, if you will. So I'm going to download this doc and go ahead and open it up. And of course, it pops up our password protection field. So I'm going to put in Alfresco, and the content's now available for viewing. So if you'll note, one other thing that we've added to this, this version of the PDF toolkit is our TIFF to PDF transformer. This is going to be driven off of a content rule. So I'm going to go into my rules test folder and take a look at the TIFF transform test and go to manage rules here. Now this works just like any other PDF to or any other transformer within Alfresco. You're going to give it a target MIME type, and if Alfresco can find a transformer that will work, or a combination of transformers, between the source MIME type and the target, then the transformation will be executed. So in this case, we're telling it to look at the MIME type and CM content. If it's TIFF image, we're going to do a transform and copy content, and we're going to target Adobe PDF, and I've told it to put it into this /PDF folder. So I have a really simple, it's just kind of a dummy fake invoice here that may have come from a scanner or something else that outputs TIFF content. And to drag this over to the PDF folder, our scanned invoice is here. And if we go into the PDF folder, we now have scannedinvoice.pdf. And there's our TIFF image actually put into a PDF doc. So you'll notice that it's not quite centered, whereas the original TIFF was. This is because of the lack of scaling hints that are in the transformer today. That's one of the things that version 1.1 will hopefully address. We also talked briefly about the advanced search functionality. So if I were to go back to the document library here and go to advanced search, we've added these new options to the search type menu. So we can actually go in and search for signed PDF docs. Go ahead and say what's the signature date. So if we're looking for a contract that was digitally signed between yesterday and today, we can filter that on date range. We can look for the location, the reason it was signed. These are actually extracted from the PDF metadata. So when you do a digital signature to a PDF doc, it captures the reason and the location of that signature. And all of that stuff is searchable. The same thing with encrypted PDF documents. So we can search for the encrypted date or what user actually performed the encryption. Briefly, earlier, we touched on using these actions from the JavaScript API. Yesterday, I gave a lightning talk on extending the Alfresco JavaScript API with new root scope objects. And one of the things that I said not to do there was if you already have a way to call that functionality from one of our existing root scope objects, don't bother writing a new one. And this is when I learned that. Originally, I thought it would be a great idea to have a root scope JavaScript object that allowed you to easily access all the functionality of the PDF toolkit from JavaScript. By the time I got done writing it, it turned out that using that new root scope object was actually no easier than just using the existing actions object. So to do this, it's actually really easy. You'll define a couple of variables, a PDF to watermark. We're going to use the watermark action as an example. A destination folder, which is where the watermarked PDF is going to end up once it's done. And then we're going to define the parameters for this action. The watermark text, the type, what pages, the depth. Now, these parameters here are the ones I was talking about earlier that are defined in our module context XML. So if you're wondering what the valid values are for these parameters, that's the place to check. And then once we've got the action object built up, we just call execute and pass in a script node reference to the node that we actually would want to watermark in this case. I've tested this out. This works whether you're talking about a script that's loaded into the data dictionary that you're calling from the execute script action. This works within script tasks and activity. So you can actually integrate this watermark functionality or digital signature functionality directly into custom activity workflows. And of course, this also works from custom web scripts. So if you're doing a custom web script for document ingestion, for example, and you want to make sure that all the content that's coming into the repository gets one of these actions applied to it, you can actually just use code very similar to this to perform those as part of that ingestion process. Building the PDF toolkit, really easy. I was hoping Gab would be here to see this. It's just a Maven project. So you check it out, run Maven clean package, and it'll emit 2 AMP files. It's very, very simple. Of course, that does apply once Maven finishes downloading the internet for you. A little bit about the roadmap. Version 1.1 came out, or 1.0 came out just ahead of this conference. Actually, if you look around, a few open source projects that were presented here all coincidentally had 1.0 releases right before DevCon. Version 1.1 is slated for release hopefully next month. We've got a lot of bug fixes here. Thankfully, the people that use this, and there are a lot of them, hundreds of good deployments in the field, they're very good about reporting bugs, and I like to think we're pretty good at fixing them. So we do tend to respond to those pretty quickly. We've also got 4.2 compatibility. If anybody here attended Dave Draper's talk on share extensibility or the new share extension mechanisms yesterday, you'd know that the head FTL files in share web scripts are being deprecated. They're still there, but the right way to go forward from 4.2 onward is to actually use the new mechanisms that are built into the HTML free marker template as opposed to the header free marker template. Version 1.1, we're going to go ahead and address that right away. We've also added a delete page action. So one of the things you may have noticed during the demo, an action that I didn't talk about, is delete pages from PDF. So this one defines basically a very simple grammar where you can give us a list of pages or page ranges that you'd like to have removed from the PDF doc, and then we execute an action, of course, and strip all of those pages out. Sometime after the new year, once we've all gotten over our holiday hangovers, version 1.2 is going to come out. This is already under development. We've got an improved TIFF to PDF transformer. The goal here, of course, is to add these scaling options, maybe some sensible defaults, right, so that we can make sure that it at least scales in a sane way, even if you don't do any additional configuration. And then the second one, second feature we're going to add there is support for multi-page TIFFs. I mean, a TIFF image can actually contain multiple images in one file. Right now, we don't handle that very well. So we're going to add support for multi-image TIFF images. And then a download as PDF document action. So this one's actually kind of cool. Alfresco already has the ability to determine through the transformers whether or not a specific piece of content can even be transformed to a PDF doc at all. Well, once we know that, we can call that transformation chain and allow you to download that as a PDF directly. So we're going to add a new document library action that lets you take any piece of content in the repository that is transformable to PDF and go ahead and download that as a PDF doc. And then, of course, a little bit longer term, a PDFA transformer. This is probably the single most requested feature. There are some directives coming out of Europe, European government, that require PDFA for certain types of documents. For those that aren't familiar, PDFA is a PDF subset that's designed for long-term archival storage. The PDF format is super flexible, and it allows you to do things like embed external font files. You can embed media. The problem with these is that if you're linking to external resources and the external resources aren't available, you've now lost a ton of fidelity in your document, right? You don't have the same piece of content anymore. So PDFA is designed to address that. It requires embedded resources for everything, all self-contained, and a bunch of other things as well. So we're trying to get there, to get to the point where PDFA is functional in the toolkit, probably as a transformer. And this is really targeted at government customers and other customers with long-term archival requirements. It's kind of a tricky problem because in some cases, getting an existing PDF to PDFA does require a complete re-rendering of the doc. You've got to take it with the resources that you have and almost print it to PDFA. Thankfully, it looks like LibreOffice can actually do that, so we'll just have to write a custom transformer that uses that functionality and then moves on. Another thing that's big on the list is annotations. I don't know if there's a requirement for this out of the crowd, but I'd like to really add annotations to the document previews. So we've got, through the Share Extras project, a really cool document previewer that uses pdf.js. And pdf.js will render a PDF document using HTML5 and JavaScript in the browser. There's no Flash involved. What's cool about that is then we can intercept click events and such within the document, send those back to a web script, and use the existing functionality in the PDF toolkit to apply document annotations at the right locations. A real quick word about, actually, that's a good point, good segue. The library that we're using for this is all iText. So if anybody here already knows iText, this should all be familiar to you. This is really implemented as a series of wrappers around iText functionality. The last thing we have coming, hopefully in the summer, I met another developer in Berlin who's working on a Tesseract OCR engine that'll run within the context of Alfresco. And he's expressed interest in contributing that back so that we can then do optical character recognition on a PDF document and embed that as another layer in the doc to make your content, your image content, actually searchable. The last thing that's on the roadmap for 2013 is hopefully what we hear here today. So while, of course, it was important to get out and talk about what we're actually doing, a big part of why I wanted to come this year is to kind of get some feedback from people that might be using this or have an interest in using it to tell us what are the most important features, where should we be focusing our attention, and of course also to put out a call for help. I think the issues list is manageable, but the new feature list is huge. And if anybody is already using this or has interest in contributing and helping us improve it, I'm more than open to that. I would encourage that. I would buy you a beer if you would do that. So I guess we can start with any questions.
I'm curious on the encryption.
Oh, let's hold on until we can get the mic, because we're actually recording the session. And if you've got the mic, then we can make sure that gets captured.
On the encryption ability, would that kind of scenario work if you have a document you want to restrict to only certain users, and if you add a link to that location in Alfresco with like the view in browser value and it's encrypted, would the encrypted, would the dialog box pop up to display, okay, you need this password to actually view the document?
Now you mean view in browser, not view through the preview, right?
Exactly.
Yes, both Adobe PDF will, if you have that installed, it'll do that. The embedded PDF viewer. Chrome has a built-in PDF viewer that will also work in that way. So if you provide the view in browser link to people and they don't have the password, then of course they won't be able to view that content.
Okay, but so a dialog does pop up. Okay.
Yeah, it sure does.
That's brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, if you've got it embedded in an iframe, for example, and a native PDF viewer pops up, it will prompt you for a password.
You did mention OCR for 2013, but when you do the TIFF to PDF transformation, can you search on the content on that PDF?
Unfortunately not. That's one of the limitations of TIFF to PDF, is that it is at that point a PDF with an image embedded. It's not actually doing OCR at that point. So that's the gap that we're hoping to fill with this new edition. Oh, we got one more.
Yeah, just a quick question on a follow-up related to the PDF.js and HTML5. Did you say that you were going to be leveraging that soon, or is that going to be like an Alfresco feature, or?
Yeah, I want to be. That brings up another good point, actually. I do want to be really clear. This is an open source project. It is not something that is core product. It is a community maintained extension. The PDF.js viewer is already out there. So if you go to the Share Extras project, there's a PDF.js document preview component that you can add to Share. It exposes 2 modules that you have to add through the Share module management interface. And when you do that, it'll actually replace the Flash previewer with PDF.js. This is also community contributed, so it's not supported officially through Alfresco. But that's the work that we're looking to build on to add the annotations functions. But if you're looking to try it out, within the Share Extras project, it exists today.
Any plans or capability to combine the watermarking and the digital signature to one?
We
so
got
you'll
that.
Have a
yeah,
when
we
you
got
print
that.
That document, you'll have a very clean.
Right. We got that exact same question in Berlin, and based on the fact that it's come up twice, I think yeah, we're going to have to do that. The iText digital signature feature already allows us to add an image that contains a signature. And it'll get applied as part of the signature process. So we don't actually have to do a 2-step. We don't have to do encrypt it and then watermark it. We can just provide the image at the time the signature is applied, and then iText will work some magic and just stick that right in there for us. Part of the issue there is how do we manage it, right? So right now, the digital signature action requires us to pick a key store to use to do the sign, or pick a certificate to use to do the signature. What I'd like to implement in the future maybe is something that drives that off the user home directory. So within your user home in Alfresco, you can put the user's private key there. You can put the user's signature image there. And the digital signatures document library action will be driven off of those locations by default. Of course, it could be overridden. But yeah, at the moment, it would be a 2-step process. Sign it, actually first watermark it with the signature, then sign it. Because once it's been signed, of course, if you were to watermark it, you've invalidated the signature.
Hey, I just looked at your POM file and noticed that PDF box and iText 5 were in there. And I'm wondering if it's in the plans to get off of iText and move to PDF box, because the newer iTexts have licensing terms that might be bad for some people.
Yeah, the Affero GPL actually is kind of an issue, and we have one of our project team members is actually focusing on that right now. We've been talking with a few people to figure out what we can and can't do. I think as long as we don't modify iText, and the fact that the extension is completely open source should keep us in the clear. But I understand that license for other people and other applications might not be appropriate. Unfortunately, PDF box lacks a lot of the functionality. When it comes to PDF manipulation in Alfresco, despite the shift to the Affero GPL, iText is still the Cadillac. we have PDF box in there today as a dependency because that's what Alfresco uses by default for text extraction. So at this point, I don't think we could move to PDF box exclusively. I just don't think it has the features that we need to get the job done.
You mentioned Tesseract. I've been playing with that a little bit. The one thing I was interested in trying to figure out how to do is, and so I'm wondering what direction you're going with this, is when you've got a PDF in the system, of course, some of them do contain a great deal of text already for search. So what was the plan on, how would you want to do that, such as having a minimum amount of text before it OCRs or max?
Unfortunately, I'm not really equipped to answer that question. The gentleman who's working on the Tesseract components is not here, but I can put you in contact with him over Twitter if you want to reach out and ask him how he's doing it.
Okay, yeah, I am interested in that. I was looking at building something myself to do it, so.
Yeah, after this, we'll circle up. I'll give you my card. Just send me an email, and I'll arrange an introduction so that maybe you guys can brainstorm a little bit. That it? What's that? Oh, actually, yeah, the doors are already locked, and we're not unlocking them until we get at least 2 volunteers. That got bigger laughs in Berlin. So the project pages here, we're hosted out on Google Code. We make use of all the Google Code functionality, so you can go out there, you can check out the code. Our issue tracker is there, so if you run across any bugs, any problems, please report them. We can't fix them if we don't know they're out there. If you want to know about the next release or subsequent releases, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm not a huge Twitter spammer, so I won't clog up your feed too badly, except the week of DevCon. And that's it. Thank you very much, and please rate the session.